And we have put in place the strongest sanctions ever, which leave the Russian economy facing a decade of regression and its industry starved of any modern and critical technologies. There will be no impunity for these Russian crimes.
Alright guys, so Europe isn't gonna stop. The Russian economy isn't collapsing. It's the EU economy that's in tatters. But the sunk cost fallacy is really hard to break away from. And this financial war is escalating out of control. Europe has committed to 2 additional punishments for Russia's economy. And this might hurt Moscow in the short run, but down the road, this will backfire badly on Europe. Worst of all, they're helping to build a stronger China. Beijing will be the undisputed winner of this. The EU is targeting Russian LNG exports, including their tankers. The idea here is to force Russia to export less gas to the world. The hope is to crush Russian revenues. But the way they are going about it is pure hypocrisy. Europe is going to deny the world Russian energy but still consume it themselves. And this is going to anger many Asian countries, including Japan. There's a second part to these sanctions as well, and that is targeting Russia's payment system, the equivalent of SWIFT. Europe is afraid of EU companies and banks trading with Moscow using the SPFS system. Obviously, this is going to boomerang and hurt European companies, many of which still operate in Russia. There's money to be made there, and these firms aren't living. According to Yale, companies like Ariston from Italy and Auchan from France are still in Russia. They are operating in the country and some are even actively hiring workers. Business is booming. This is a clear sign that Russia isn't collapsing yet. Life still carries on. The sanctions obviously haven't worked. Europe is trying to force Russia to decouple from the world because they are running out of time.
To make a peace deal there, would you be willing to take NATO expansion off the table if that's what it took to get the Russians and the Ukrainians to make a deal? Would you be willing to do that?
So for 20 years, I heard that NATO, if Ukraine goes into NATO, it's a real problem for Russia. I've heard that for a long time. And I think that's really why this war started. I'm not sure that this war would have started. Biden was saying all of the wrong things. And one of the wrong things, he was saying, no, Ukraine will go into NATO. That's one of the many things he said. When I listened to him speak, I said, this guy is going to start a war.
Blinken told Lavrov that the administration was not only going to bring Ukraine into NATO, but that they thought it was okay for the United States to put nuclear weapons in Ukraine. So no wonder the Russians hit the roof. I mean, you talk about provocation.
Well, let's say you were running Russia. You wouldn't be too happy. And that's always been off the table. You know, it's a border. If they thought that that was going to remain sort of a territory where you don't have NATO, but they don't want to have soldiers right on their border. They don't want to have it. It's always been understood, and that's even before Putin. It's always been understood that that was a no-no. And now you can go against their wishes, and it doesn't mean they're right when they say that. But that was very provocative. And now it's even more provocative. And they're talking about, I hear routinely, they're now talking about Ukraine entering NATO. And now I hear France wants to go in and fight. Well, I wish them a lot of luck. I think good luck.
If Trump wins, he might very well stop the war. US aid to Ukraine might end in a hurry, and Europe obviously doesn't want that. Trump already has a plan to halt funding unless peace talks begin with Moscow. And if you're Germany or France, this will freak you out. Europe will be left all alone to fight on, and without US help, it's a done deal. But let's go through Europe's ban on Russian LNG because it's really self-serving. It shows us how desperate they truly are. The LNG ban will block the transshipment of Russian LNG to third countries via the EU. Reloadings and ship-to-ship transfers are also prohibited. And here's the problem with this. The EU still gets to buy gas from Russia. It's countries like China, India and Japan that won't get their shipments. This isn't good for Asia. Consider the route in blue. LNG normally flows from the Yamal plant from Russia to LNG re-export terminals in Europe. The gas then flows eastwards to Asia using the EU as a transit point. Now that route is cut off, the only alternative is the Northern Sea route in yellow. That route cuts through the Arctic, which is filled with thick ice, so it's not open all year round. That means shipments to Asia will be disrupted now. 10% of Japan's LNG comes from Russia. They will now have to source it from elsewhere, which would most definitely cost more. Europe, on the other hand, might even pay cheaper prices. All the existing LNG will be stuck in Europe. The cargoes can't be re-exported out, and that increases the immediate supply of energy and pushes prices down. But they forgot the second order effects. Who ultimately benefits from this? It will be China. Russia will reroute more supply to China and sell at even cheaper prices. We know the EU is about to launch a trade war with China. It's the same old overcapacity argument. But what do you think will happen if China gets even cheaper energy from Russia? Their industries will boom even further and the manufacturing gap will grow even wider. In a Russian forecast, prices to China will reach a big discount. Gas to Beijing could be 28% cheaper than supply to Europe, and that was before the LNG sanctions. This gap can now easily hit 30 or even 40% going forward. By 2027, China will still benefit from an enormous discount versus Europe. They will be paying under $230 per thousand cubic meters of gas. Europe, on the other hand, will be paying $315 for the same amount. That's almost 40% higher. It's no wonder their industries are in deep trouble. They simply can't compete with Chinese manufacturing. The energy inputs are simply too high. Europe might score an immediate win. Yes, Russian revenues could indeed drop by selling cheaper gas to China, no doubt about it. But we need to look at the bigger picture, the whole equation. This LNG ban only serves to make China's economy even stronger, which brings us to the next set of sanctions. Europe is also targeting the SPFS payment system, and this is Russia's own financial messaging system. The Bank of Russia runs it, and over 550 banks and companies all over the world are using it. EU companies and banks are forbidden from using this to make transactions with Russia. Von der Leyen wants to close the banking loopholes. So if you're a German or Austrian bank, you can't use SWIFT and you can't use the Russian system either. The plan is to make trading with Moscow near impossible, so companies simply give up. But the next part is even more dangerous. The EU wants to impose a transaction ban on certain entities in third countries using SPFS, and this goes beyond the jurisdiction of EU nations. This could mean an oil company in India buying Russian crude. It could mean a Chinese bank facilitating normal trade like selling cars or chips. As long as you use the system, Europe can impose penalties on you. They could cut your access away to European banks. But they kind of forgot the big elephant in the room, and that once again is China. Beijing has pledged support to Russia. Trade between them is booming and is keeping both their economies afloat amidst all the sanctions.
We, together with my colleague and friend, President Xi Jinping, set a goal to reach $200 billion of mutual trade with China this year. We have exceeded this level. According to our figures, our bilateral trade with China totals already $230 billion, and the Chinese statistics says it is $240 billion. One more important thing, our trade is well balanced, mutually complementary in high-tech, energy, scientific research and development. It is very balanced.
If Europe sanctions companies around the world using the SPFS system, Russia will simply turn to China. Putin will work closer with Beijing and leverage on China's platform. And this will be a dreadful mistake for Europe. It will cause companies and countries to migrate to an even bigger financial machine. China's SIP system covers more than 4,500 banks around the world. We are talking about at least 182 countries. It gets even more interesting. Around 30 Russian banks are already connected to China's payment system. And that means an EU bank or company can use China's SIPs to make transactions with Russian companies. Business can still be done using China's financial system as a proxy. What Europe is doing is strengthening China's payment platform. It's making it even more resilient. It sanction-proofs China's economy even more. There are always alternatives outside the SWIFT system, and I don't think Europe is crazy enough to sanction China. That's a bridge too far. It's no surprise that China is doubling down on their industries. They've cornered the EV sector today, and now Beijing is focusing on microchips. Just a week ago, the US announced investment restrictions into Chinese tech. Very soon, US companies will be banned from investing in Chinese semiconductors, AI technology, and microelectronics. It's the decoupling of Western money to China. Beijing will have to rely on their own money and expertise to push ahead. And because of Europe's sanctions on Russia, they will have an abundance of cheap energy to make it happen. It's really ironic if you think about it. Punishing Russia in oil and gas just benefits China. Just look at the geography. The country is just next door. That's all you need to know. In the years to come, bigger breakthroughs in chip making will happen, and the West once again will be shocked at the amount of progress. A large part of this success will be cheap energy from Russian gas. Another sector China is trying to corner is the aviation industry. They want to make quality planes to compete with the US and Europe. China Southern Airlines is buying 100 Comet jets worth $10 billion. They're snubbing planes from Airbus and Boeing to buy more from their own domestic brand instead. While this is happening, we have Boeing planes catching on fire. It's really crazy.
Oh my god, it's on fire! Oh my god! Sorry. It's on fire! Mom!
Airbus is in trouble too, issuing a profit warning. Their shares are dropping like a rock. The cost of manufacturing outside of China is just too high. Building a plane is highly energy intensive, from production all the way to assembly. You need lots of power to produce a jet. China is now guaranteed cheap Russian energy. You combine this with the trade war with the West, we'll see Comet build more market share in China itself. The Chinese market is currently a duopoly. It's cornered by both Airbus and Boeing. Airbus alone has over 2,100 planes and accounts for over 50% of the entire market. Boeing's planes makes up over 40% as well. So there's a huge domestic market for Comac to grab market share from. It's the same playbook that helped build China's EV sector. Government subsidies, cheap energy costs, a vertical supply chain, and a huge domestic demand. Once China corners their own market, we can expect them to challenge Boeing and Airbus in the rest of Asia as well, and then the world. And these are just two second-order effects of the Russian sanctions. Europe's latest package really sounds tough. You block Russian LNG from the world while keeping it for Europe. Then you block the Russian SWIFT system. But all that does to drive Putin and Beijing even closer together. Cheaper energy will flow to China and make their industries even more competitive. 5 or 10 years down the road, Europe will face another overcapacity crisis. But this time, it won't be EVs, but even more critical exports. China will flood the world with cheap semiconductors and jet planes. Sanctions don't work, they always tend to backfire. But let me know what you think. Will Europe's punishments backfire or will it actually work? And is China the big winner of this? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe as we navigate through these crazy times.